Let me paint you a picture. You walk into a room, calm, composed, radiant. And suddenly the same people who once ignored you can't take their eyes off you. They whisper, they stare, they wonder, what happened? They remember the days they didn't value your presence, and now they're itching for your attention. But you've moved on. You're not chasing approval anymore. You're commanding respect. See, here's the truth. The most powerful moment in your life isn't when someone finally admits they were wrong about you. It's when you stop needing them to. It's when you rise so high, so solid, so untouchable, that regret becomes the only language they have left to speak your name. You know the type of regret I'm talking about. The one that hits them late at night, when they scroll through your life and see how you've changed. When they realize that, while they were busy doubting you, you were busy building. While they played games, you were mastering yours. And now, they're chasing what they once overlooked. But here's the twist. You didn't get here by trying to make them regret it. You got here by changing your attitude. 9 shifts. 9 ways of carrying yourself that quietly flip the power dynamic without a single word of revenge. Because the real glow up isn't loud. It's silent. It's not in the posts, not in the drama, not in proving anything. It's in the moment you stop auditioning for a role in someone else's life and start directing your own. This talk, right here, right now, is about those 9 attitudes that make the people who once underestimated you regret ever taking you for granted. Not because you became bitter, but because you became better. And when you become better, you become unforgettable. So stay with me, because by the time we're done, you'll know exactly how to move with the kind of power that makes them wonder how they ever lived without your energy. Let's begin. There comes a moment when you realize that your silence has more power than your words ever did. That moment, when you stop explaining, stop convincing, stop trying to be understood, is the moment you begin to reclaim yourself. Walking away isn't weakness. It isn't surrender. It's strategy. It's strength wrapped in calmness. And it's the most disarming energy you'll ever carry. You see, most people believe power is loud. They think it's in the confrontation, the argument, the last word. But true power is quiet. It's the stillness that follows when you decide you're done handing your energy to people who don't deserve it. The world teaches us to fight for attention, to prove our worth, to make people see what they're losing. But here's the truth. Those who need convincing will never value you the way they should. And those who truly value you will never need convincing at all. When you disengage, you change the entire dynamic. You remove the drama that once fueled them. You take away their favorite game. The push and pull, the emotional chase, the need for validation. Suddenly they're standing there, waiting for the reaction that never comes, waiting for the fight that never starts. And in that silence, they start to feel the weight of your absence. Because nothing haunts a person like the quiet departure of someone who used to care deeply. Not a slammed door, not angry words, just the quiet realization that you are gone, and you're not coming back this time. Disengagement doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about your peace than their approval. You care more about protecting your energy than proving your point. You've learned that peace is far more expensive than pride, and you're no longer willing to spend it cheaply. When you walk away with grace, you communicate something powerful. I was here because I chose to be, not because I needed to be. And that distinction changes everything. People regret losing you when they realize your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. You want to know what makes people come chasing desperately. It's not anger. It's not revenge. It's the vacuum your absence creates. When your energy is no longer available, when your light no longer illuminates their life, they suddenly realize what it meant to have you there. They replay the moments. They question their decisions. They wonder how they managed to misread your worth so badly. And it eats at them, not because you punished them, because you didn't. You simply walked away. That's what grace looks like. It's dignity under control. It's refusing to throw stones when you could, because you've already built something higher to stand on. You've learned that nothing disrupts chaos faster than calm. You've learned that silence can say what words never could. And I'll tell you something else. Disengagement isn't about manipulation. It's about liberation. It's not about making someone feel guilty. It's about freeing yourself from the cycle that keeps you small. You stop explaining to people who have already made up their minds. You stop waiting for closure from people who benefit from your confusion. You stop investing your heart where your value isn't recognized. Walking away doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you stopped wasting care. It's a choice to redirect that love, attention, and loyalty back to yourself. You stop chasing validation and start creating it within. You stop waiting for someone else to recognize your worth and start embodying it so fiercely that it becomes impossible to ignore. And here's what happens next when you disengage. You create mystery. You create space, and space is where reflection happens. People cannot see your value when you're constantly available, constantly forgiving, constantly explaining. Your presence becomes ordinary, but your absence, your silence, becomes unforgettable. That's when they start remembering who you were, what you brought, and how you made them feel. Disengagement also teaches you discernment. It shows you who was attached to your presence versus who was connected to your essence. The ones who truly cared will respect your distance and try to understand. The ones who only benefited from your energy will panic. They'll reach out not because they miss you, but because they miss what you gave them. They'll test your boundaries to see if you'll fall back into the same patterns. That's why walking away with grace requires strength. It's not just leaving, it's staying gone when your emotions want to return. And that's where growth happens. Every time you resist the urge to go back, you're telling the universe, I'm ready for better. Every time you choose silence over chaos, you're upgrading your frequency. You're no longer reacting from pain, you're responding from power. Disengagement is also about emotional maturity. It's knowing when to stop arguing, when to stop proving, when to stop trying to make someone see your worth. You understand that your energy is a currency, and you refuse to overspend it where there's no return. You realize that walking away doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've outgrown the need to win someone else's validation. You begin to carry yourself differently. Your voice softens, your eyes clear, your posture changes. There's a stillness about you that says, I'm not here to compete for attention. That quiet confidence is magnetic. It draws people in without effort, because now you're radiating peace, and peace is rare. They start to wonder why they can't reach you anymore. They start to notice how you've detached from their chaos. You no longer engage in arguments. You no longer explain. You simply wish them well and move on. And that's when regret begins to sink in. Because nothing hurts more than realizing that the person you once took for granted no longer needs you. Not out of anger, but out of evolution. This is what walking away with grace truly means. It's not the dramatic exit, it's the subtle shift. It's the quiet confidence that comes when you finally understand your own worth. It's the moment you stop chasing closure and start living with clarity. You don't owe anyone a breakdown, an explanation, or an audience to your growth. The people who once underestimated you will watch your silence turn into success. They'll see your peace become your power. They'll feel the loss of your energy long after you've stopped thinking about them. And that's the kind of regret that doesn't fade. Because it's not born from guilt, it's born from realization. So if you've ever wondered what makes people regret losing you, it's not revenge. It's not proving a point, it's walking away with grace. It's choosing yourself so completely that they have no choice but to see the difference between who you were and who you've become. Disengage with elegance. Leave quietly. Rise deliberately. And watch how the very same people who once dismissed you will one day whisper your name with respect, wondering how they ever thought they could live without you. There comes a time in your life when you have to stop negotiating with people who treat your worth like a bargain sale. You know what I mean? Those who expect you to lower your standards, to give more than you receive, to tolerate less than you deserve. And maybe for a while you did. Maybe you thought that if you loved harder, proved more, showed them your loyalty, they'd finally recognize your value. But here's the truth. You don't earn respect by overextending yourself. You earn it by setting boundaries and keeping them. Self-respect is not a personality trait, it's a discipline. It's something you practice every single day through your decisions, your words, and your silence. It's how you teach people how to treat you, and it's how you remind yourself what you will and will not tolerate. When you decide to stop offering discounts on your value, you send a powerful message, not just to others, but to yourself. You're saying, I'm no longer available for relationships that require me to shrink. You're saying, my kindness is not a weakness, and my love is not a clearance item. See, people often confuse humility with self-sacrifice. They think being a good person means saying yes to everything, accepting every behavior, being endlessly patient. But there's a difference between kindness and self-erasure. Being kind doesn't mean allowing disrespect. Being understanding doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment. And being loyal doesn't mean abandoning yourself in the process. When you respect yourself, you build invisible walls around your peace. Not to keep love out, but to keep chaos from getting in. You understand that your time, your attention, your energy, these are sacred currencies, and not everyone deserves unlimited access to them. Let's be honest, some people only appreciate your value when it costs them nothing. They want your support, your empathy, your presence, but they don't want the accountability that comes with it. They take your patience for granted because they know you'll stay. They test your boundaries because you've taught them you'll forgive. But the moment you raise your standards, the moment you say, "This is what I will no longer accept," everything changes. Some will call you difficult. Some will say you've changed. And they're right, you have. You've changed from someone who tolerated nonsense to someone who enforces peace. You've changed from someone who needed validation to someone who knows their worth. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. Self-respect means understanding that not everyone will like your boundaries, but that's not your problem. It's not your job to make people comfortable with the standards that protect your peace. It's your job to honor yourself enough to keep them in place, even when it costs you connections. Because the truth is, anyone who walks away when you raise your standards was benefiting from you having none. And that realization, as painful as it is also freeing. You stop blaming yourself for losing people. You start understanding that you didn't lose them. They lost access to you. You didn't become too much. They were just too comfortable with the version of you that accepted less. When you stop offering discounts on your value, people who once took you for granted start to notice the difference. They notice that you no longer answer calls that drain your energy. They notice that you don't explain your boundaries anymore. You simply live by them. They notice the calm that comes from knowing you're no longer for sale. And that's when regret creeps in, because self-respect is magnetic. It draws in people who value you, and it quietly repels those who don't. The ones who underestimated you begin to realize they were never entitled to your energy in the first place. They begin to understand that your worth was never up for debate. They just weren't qualified to recognize it. Self-respect also teaches you patience. It reminds you that not everything deserves your immediate reaction. Sometimes the best response is no response. When you respect yourself, you don't chase explanations from people who showed you exactly who they are. You don't beg for closure from those who benefited from your confusion. You don't explain your boundaries to those committed to crossing them. You let silence do the talking. And that silence, that calm, grounded detachment, that's when people start to feel your absence, because they were used to you showing up, fixing, understanding, forgiving. They were used to you discounting your value to make them comfortable. And now, when you stop doing that, they have to face the reality that they can't access you in the same way anymore. That's the moment when they start chasing. Not because you've changed into someone new, but because you finally remembered who you were before you started dimming your light to fit into their shadow. Self-respect also means choosing yourself in moments when it hurts. It's easy to say, "I deserve better," when everything is fine. It's harder to walk away when your heart still cares. But that's the difference between emotion and principle. Emotion wants comfort. Principle demands dignity. And every time you choose dignity over temporary comfort, you raise your value, not in their eyes, but in your own. You begin to attract differently. The conversations you tolerate change. The company you keep evolves. You no longer resonate with people who thrive on chaos, drama, or manipulation. You gravitate toward calm, toward authenticity, toward those who mirror your peace. Because when you respect yourself, you naturally align with people who do the same. And here's something powerful. Self-respect doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It's in the no you say softly but firmly. It's in the message you don't respond to. It's in the opportunity you decline because it doesn't align with your integrity. It's in the quiet walkaway that says, "I choose peace over proving a point." That's how you become untouchable. Because once you realize that your worth is non-negotiable, no amount of manipulation can sway you. You stop seeking external validation because you've built an internal standard. You stop begging to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. People start to sense it. They notice the shift. Your energy changes, not because you became cold, but because you became clear. You're no longer trying to be liked. You're trying to be respected. You're no longer looking for temporary attention. You're cultivating lasting alignment. And that clarity scares those who once fed on your uncertainty. The discipline of self-respect isn't easy. It requires you to enforce boundaries when it would be easier to bend them. It demands that you hold your ground even when your heart aches. It means understanding that peace is sometimes lonely but never empty. And when you master that, when you finally stop giving discounts on your value, you become the kind of person that others can't forget, no matter how hard they try. Because regret doesn't come from losing someone perfect. It comes from losing someone solid, someone who knew how to love deeply, give fully, and still know when to walk away. That's the power of self-respect. It doesn't scream. It doesn't seek revenge. It simply says, I know what I bring, and I will never again let anyone treat it like it's replaceable. And that quiet, steady certainty, that's what makes the ones who didn't value you come chasing back, desperate to feel again what they only now realize was priceless all along. There's a certain kind of power that comes when you stop talking about what you're going to do and just start doing it. No posts, no warnings, no dramatic declarations. You simply disappear into the work, into your focus, into your healing, and when you return, you're unrecognizable. That's glow-up energy. It's not about revenge or showing off. It's about becoming so invested in your evolution that you stop needing anyone to notice it. Because here's the truth. Real transformation doesn't need to be broadcast. It reveals itself in silence, and that silence speaks volumes. At some point, you get tired of explaining your dreams to people who only see your potential as a threat. You get tired of being underestimated, tired of trying to prove that you're capable of more. And one day, you decide, I don't need to convince anyone anymore. I'll just let the results do the talking. That's the moment you shift. That's the moment you stop performing for validation and start building for legacy. The glow up isn't about changing your hair, your clothes, or your body. Although that might be part of it. It's deeper than that. It's the internal renovation, the spiritual reconstruction, the mental sharpening that happens when you decide to take accountability for your life. When you stop blaming others, stop making excuses, stop waiting for luck, and you start moving with purpose. You start making better choices quietly. You start choosing peace over attention, solitude over chaos, discipline over comfort. You start protecting your time like it's gold, because now you understand it is. This kind of transformation doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. It's subtle. It's in the way you carry yourself, in the calm behind your words, in the confidence that doesn't demand validation. You become someone who doesn't need to prove a point because you are the point. You start to walk into rooms differently, not louder but surer. You don't need the spotlight because you've learned how to be the light. And here's what's fascinating: when you start leveling up quietly, the same people who once dismissed you start to feel uncomfortable. They can't figure out what changed. You're not reacting to them anymore. You're not competing. You're not even explaining. You've simply elevated to a frequency they can't access. You've outgrown the noise that once consumed you. The glow up is a spiritual awakening disguised as a lifestyle change. It's when you start realizing that you don't need to chase love, opportunities, or validation. You attract them by the person you become. You stop talking about what you're worth and start living like you know it. You stop responding to disrespect and start rewarding consistency. You stop waiting for apologies and start moving in forgiveness, not for them, but for your own freedom. And it's in that silence, in that inward focus, that everything starts to shift. Your energy becomes rare. Your presence becomes intentional. You start to stand out not because you're trying to be seen, but because your peace radiates through everything you do. That's the kind of glow no product, no social media post, no performance can replicate. It's the glow that comes from doing the work when nobody's watching. People will start to ask, "What happened to you?" And the answer will be simple: I stopped betraying myself. You'll realize that your glow up wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about returning to who you were before you started doubting yourself, before you allowed the world to make you small, before you allowed people to convince you that you were asking for too much when all you wanted was respect, peace, and reciprocity. Leveling up without announcement means you've entered a new phase of maturity. You no longer need to prove that you've changed because your life speaks for you. The conversations you have, the people you spend time with, the boundaries you keep, they all tell the story. You're no longer chasing applause because you've learned that applause fades, but integrity doesn't. You've stopped trying to be impressive and instead, you've become impactful. This is where regret starts to settle for those who once overlooked you. Because while they were busy talking, you were busy building. While they were doubting you, you were developing yourself. They were distracted by surface, level appearances, and you were mastering substance. They'll scroll through your life one day and realize became everything they once thought you couldn't. Not out of spite, but out of evolution. The beauty of a quiet glow up is that it's honest. It's not curated for attention. It's cultivated through effort. You don't fake confidence. You earn it through the promises you keep to yourself. You don't project happiness. You build it through discipline, healing, and self-respect. You don't announce your plans because you're too busy executing them. You learn to fall in love with the process more than the praise. And that's the secret: consistency. The glow up is born from the small, daily decisions nobody sees: waking up early, saying no to distractions, forgiving when it's hard, choosing growth over comfort. It's not glamorous. It's lonely sometimes. But it's sacred. Because you're not just changing your appearance, you're changing your energy. You're becoming someone that peace recognizes and chaos avoids. Eventually, people start to notice. They start to look at you differently. The tone changes, the conversations shift. Suddenly, they speak to you with a kind of cautious respect. The kind that comes from realizing they misjudged you. That's when you know the glow up is real. It's not in how loud you've become, but in how quiet they've grown. You'll notice the ones who once dismissed you trying to circle back. They'll want to reconnect, to catch up, but you're not the same anymore. You've built too much peace to trade it for validation. You can smile at them now, genuinely, because you no longer need anything from them. That's freedom. That's what real leveling up feels like. Detachment without bitterness, success without arrogance, peace without apology. And the truth is, the glow up never ends. It's not a destination, it's a lifestyle. It's choosing growth again and again, even when no one's watching. It's falling, learning, getting up stronger. It's refusing to stay small to make others comfortable. It's knowing that your silence is not emptiness. It's power gathering momentum. So when people finally realize how far you've come, they'll call it a surprise. But you'll know it wasn't magic, it was discipline. It was countless quiet mornings, relentless self-work, invisible sacrifices, and a refusal to quit. You didn't glow up to impress anyone. You did it to meet the version of yourself you always knew was in there, waiting to be unleashed. And when they come chasing, because they will, remember this: the glow up wasn't for them. It was for you. They were never supposed to understand your silence, because your silence wasn't absence. It was transformation. It was you leveling up in private so that your presence would speak louder than your explanations ever could. That's the glow up energy: quiet, relentless, unstoppable. The kind that doesn't demand attention. It commands it. There's a certain peace that comes when you stop letting everything and everyone pull a reaction out of you. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens after you've been drained too many times, after you've given too many explanations, after you've had one too many moments of saying things in anger you later wish you hadn't. Then one day, something clicks. You realize that your power doesn't come from how loud you can get or how perfectly you can defend yourself. It comes from your ability to stay composed when everything around you is trying to make you lose control. That's emotional maturity. It's the shift from reacting to responding. It's the transition from chaos to clarity, from impulse to intention. Reacting is easy. Anyone can react. The world is full of people who live on emotional autopilot, quick to anger, quick to take offense, quick to speak before thinking. But responding, that's art. That's discipline. That's choosing not to let someone else's behavior dictate your own. When you respond, you're no longer playing defense, you're directing the energy. You're no longer trapped in their chaos. You're anchored in your peace. It's not about pretending you don't feel things. It's about mastering what you do with those feelings. Emotional maturity means you can feel deeply but think clearly. It means you can acknowledge your emotions without being ruled by them. It's knowing that calm is not weakness, it's strategy. Because in calm, you see clearly, you notice patterns, you recognize manipulation, you observe instead of absorb. When you stop reacting, people get confused. They're used to being able to push your buttons, to pull at your emotions like strings. They expect the same argument, the same explosion, the same emotional chase. But when you respond instead, with measured words or sometimes with silence, they lose that control. Suddenly, they have to face themselves, because you're no longer playing the role they scripted for you. Think about it. How many times have people tried to provoke you just to feel powerful? They bait you into arguments. They twist your words. They play victim after causing harm. And the moment you react, they win. They point and say, "See, you're the problem." But when you stay calm, when you choose stillness over storm, you take that power back. You show them that you can't be moved by drama because you've outgrown the need to prove anything. That's the real mark of evolution, when you no longer need to prove your strength through confrontation. You prove it through restraint. You stop matching people's disrespect because you know your character speaks louder than their chaos. You stop correcting every false story told about you because you understand that the truth doesn't need your defense. It needs your consistency. Emotional maturity is a quiet kind of authority. It's walking into a room and being unshockable, not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned that nothing outside of you deserves the right to disturb what's inside you. You've learned that peace is not something you find. It's something you protect. When you start operating from this space, people notice. They notice that you don't engage in arguments the way you used to. You don't explain yourself repeatedly. You don't try to convince others of your intentions. You simply say what you mean what you say, and move on. And that's when the ones who once took you for granted start to feel uneasy, because emotional maturity makes you unpredictable, not erratic, but unreadable. They can't control you anymore, and that unsettles them. You see, reacting keeps you trapped in cycles. It keeps you revisiting the same conversations, the same disappointments, the same emotional exhaustion. But responding frees you. It allows you to make decisions based on who you are, not what you feel in the moment. You stop acting out of pain and start operating from purpose. That's when you start making moves that serve your future, not your frustration. Sometimes the best response really is silence. Not out of avoidance, but out of mastery. Because silence is not empty, it's full of control. It's a signal that you've elevated to a place where you no longer waste energy explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You realize that the loudest voice in the room isn't the most powerful. It's the calmest one. People will test you. They'll push your limits to see if your calm is real. They'll provoke you just to see if they still have access to the old you. The one who reacted, who fought, who begged to be understood. But when they see that you don't flinch anymore, that you don't take the bait, that you can look at them and simply say, "I wish you well," then walk away, that's when the regret starts to form. Because they realize they can't reach you in the same way anymore. They realize that the emotional power they used to have over you is gone. And losing that control over someone strong, grounded, and composed, that's a kind of loss that hits deeper than any argument could, because now they're left alone with the noise they used to project onto you. Emotional maturity doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've stopped over-caring. You've stopped attaching your peace to other people's behavior. You no longer take everything personally, because you've learned that people's actions are a reflection of them, not you. You start to see things through a different lens. Instead of saying, "Why did they do this to me?" you begin to think, "What does this say about them?" That shift changes everything. You stop being reactive because you've developed empathy, not just for others, but for yourself. You understand that protecting your peace sometimes means walking away, sometimes means saying nothing, sometimes means choosing forgiveness without reconnection. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. You refuse to carry their chaos in your spirit any longer. And that's where your glow begins to show, not the external kind, but the internal one. The calm that radiates from someone who knows their worth and no longer feels the need to prove it. The kind of calm that makes people wonder, how did they get so strong? They'll see it in your composure, in your posture, in your energy. They'll feel it when you enter a space. That grounded presence that doesn't chase, doesn't defend, doesn't compete. The most powerful people aren't the ones who can dominate a room with their voice. They're the ones who can disarm it with their peace. You reach that level by responding instead of reacting, by slowing down, breathing, and asking yourself, what outcome do I want from this moment? Because not every situation deserves your fire. Some only require your silence. In time, the people who once thrived on your emotional responses will begin to miss them. They'll miss the validation they got from your anger, the attention they got from your pain. But you won't miss a thing because you'll be too focused on protecting your peace. That's what emotional maturity really is. Not indifference, but intelligence. It's the wisdom to know that your energy is sacred and not everyone deserves a response from it. So when they come back, when they try to pull you back into old arguments, old cycles, old emotional traps, smile, stay calm. You don't owe anyone the version of you they once could control. You've evolved. You've learned that responding isn't weakness. It's mastery, and that mastery, that calm, that grace under pressure, that's what makes them regret losing you more than anything else ever could. There comes a moment in your life when you realize that being remembered is not about being loud, flashy, or constantly seen. It's about impact. It's about how you make people feel, what you build, what you stand for, and the kind of energy you leave behind when you're no longer in the room. That's the legacy mindset. It's what separates those who chase attention from those who create influence. One fades fast, the other lasts forever. The legacy mindset starts with one decision, that your life will mean something beyond the moment. It's the point where you stop seeking to be impressive and start aiming to be impactful. You stop asking, who notices me right now? And start asking, who will remember me when I'm gone? You stop chasing trends, validation, or approval, and start building something that can't be erased. Your character, your consistency, your contribution. Most people want to be seen. Very few want to be felt. But the ones who live with legacy in mind understand something deeper, that real power doesn't come from recognition, it comes from resonance. People may forget your name, but they will never forget how you made them feel when you were around. They will remember your energy, your calm, your kindness, your strength, your integrity. Because when your presence becomes medicine in a world full of noise, you become unforgettable. The legacy mindset is not built in the spotlight. It's built in the quiet moments when no one's watching. It's in the decisions you make when no one's applauding. It's in how you treat people who can't offer you anything in return. It's in how you respond to disappointment, how you carry yourself through difficulty, how you handle power when it's finally in your hands. That's when your true character shows, and that's what people remember long after the moment has passed. There's a calm confidence in people who move with purpose. They're not rushed. They're not desperate for approval. They don't need to prove their worth, because their worth is already written in the way they live. These are the people who can walk away from noise and still hold their head high. The people who are underestimated in the beginning, then revered in the end. Because they weren't trying to win the moment. They were building a legacy. When you have a legacy mindset, you start living differently. You stop wasting time on small fights, meaningless drama, and petty distractions. You realize that every ounce of energy you spend on what doesn't matter is energy stolen from what does. So you become intentional. You speak less but mean more. You move slower but stronger. You stop trying to convince others of your value, because you know that time will always tell the truth. And time has a funny way of revealing what's real. The ones who dismissed you, doubted you, or disrespected you, they'll eventually see that you weren't trying to win their approval. You were trying to win your freedom. They'll see the seeds you planted quietly begin to grow, in your work, your peace, your presence. They'll realize you built something solid while they were chasing something shallow. And that's when the regret begins. Because while they were busy underestimating you, you were busy creating something unforgettable. The legacy mindset means you don't just live for today, you live with tomorrow in mind. You think about the mark you're leaving, the example you're setting, the story you're writing with your actions. You know that your influence is measured not by how many people follow you, but by how many lives are better because you existed. It's easy to get caught up in the noise of the world, the endless opinions, the constant competition, the desire to be noticed. But legacy thinkers know that attention is temporary. It fades, it shifts. You can trend today and be forgotten tomorrow. But impact, that's eternal. That's what makes someone regret losing access to you, not because you were popular, but because you were valuable in a way that couldn't be replicated. When you live with purpose, people feel your absence. They feel it in the way things don't flow the same without your energy. They realize that what you brought wasn't ordinary. It was rare. Maybe it was your integrity in a world that rewards shortcuts. Maybe it was your empathy in a culture that celebrates ego. Maybe it was your discipline, your vision, your consistency. Whatever it was, they remember it, because true presence leaves an imprint. To live with a legacy mindset also means learning the art of detachment. You stop needing immediate recognition. You stop needing everyone to understand your moves. You understand that legacy builders often look crazy at first. They work differently. They think long-term. They make sacrifices others won't. You may be misunderstood for a while, but that's okay. Because while others are chasing applause, you're planting foundations. You're doing the quiet work that time will one day make loud. And here's what makes the legacy mindset magnetic. It's grounded in authenticity. You're not pretending to be perfect. You're just committed to being real. Even when it's not popular, people respect that. They remember that. They remember that you stood for something when others were too afraid to. They remember that you were kind in a world that told you to be cruel. They remember that you stayed calm when chaos erupted. They remember that you were honest when lying would have been easier. That's how you become unforgettable. Not through flash, but through foundation. Not through noise, not through depth, not through ego, but through essence. And yes, the people who once dismissed you will feel it. They'll look back and realize that your absence is louder than their presence. They'll remember the peace you carried, the way you made things better without even trying, the way your energy filled spaces that now feel hollow without you. They'll replay moments and wish they'd valued you differently. But by then, you'll have moved too far forward to look back. Because legacy-minded people don't chase what's behind them. They're too busy creating what's ahead. The legacy mindset also means understanding that everything you do is a reflection of your inner standard. You write your legacy in the small things. The promises you keep, the grace you extend, the work you do even when no one's looking. Every word, every action, every choice adds to the story of who you are becoming. So you move with intention. You don't rush. You don't fake. You build. Slowly, steadily, powerfully. One day, people will ask how you did it, how you became so grounded, so respected, so untouchable. They'll think it was luck or timing or talent. But you'll know the truth. It was consistency. It was integrity. It was the refusal to settle for temporary attention when you were born to leave a permanent mark. So if you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, underestimated, remember this. Your job is not to prove your worth to those who can't see it. Your job is to become so aligned with your purpose that they can't ignore it. Keep building. Keep showing up. Keep refining. The world always catches up to what's real. And when it does, when they finally see who you've become, the poise, the power, the peace, they'll feel that regret settle in deep. Because you weren't just someone who passed through their life. You were someone who left a mark. You didn't just exist. You impacted. You didn't just shine for a moment. You built a legacy that still glows long after you've gone. At some point, you stop waiting for recognition, apologies, or closure. You stop trying to make people see what they lost, and you simply become someone they can't replace. That's the real power. That's the quiet victory that doesn't need to be announced, because your life itself becomes the proof. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every season of being underestimated was never meant to destroy you. It was designed to refine you. It taught you when to walk away, how to respect yourself, how to grow in silence, how to master your emotions, and how to build something lasting from your pain. It showed you that the most unshakable kind of power is self-mastery, the ability to rise, rebuild,